Felix Kensington never lost things. Not his car keys, not his cufflinks, and certainly not his wallet. Yet, as he stood in the private airport lounge, patting his pockets with growing frustration, reality hit him. His wallet was gone. He exhaled sharply, his jaw tightening. His assistant had already boarded the plane, and the flight to London was leaving in less than an hour. Losing a wallet wasn't just inconvenient, it was an embarrassment. Across the lounge, Madeline Turner clutched the worn leather wallet in her hands, debating whether to return it now or wait until the man beside her finished his call. She had spotted it tucked between the plush seats, abandoned, and curiosity had made her peek inside just enough to see the initials FK engraved on a sleek black cardholder. She glanced up at the man pacing near the floor-to-ceiling windows, his tailored navy suit fitting him so perfectly that it had to be custom-made. His presence exuded power, the kind of power people didn't question. He looked like someone important, someone who probably wasn't used to losing things. Taking a breath, she stood and approached him. "Excuse me," she said, holding out the wallet. "I think this belongs to you." Felix turned, his sharp blue eyes landing on her before they dropped to the wallet. Surprise flickered across his face, quickly replaced by relief. "You found this," she nodded. "It was on the seat. I figured you might need it." He took it from her, flipping it open and checking the contents. Everything was intact: his ID, credit cards, even the cash. He looked back at her, taking her in properly. She wasn't dressed like the other travelers in the lounge. No designer labels, no expensive jewelry. Just a simple navy sweater and jeans, her brown curls loosely tied back. There was something refreshingly unpolished about her, something that made her stand out. "You just saved me from a massive headache," he admitted. "Thank you." Madeline Turner," he extended his hand. "Felix Kensington." She shook it, and for a moment, something shifted in the air between them. His grip was firm, warm, lingering just a second too long. She pulled away, clearing her throat. "Well, I should go. My flight boards soon." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Let me thank you properly." She glanced over her shoulder, raising an eyebrow. "By doing what?" "Dinner, anywhere you want, my treat." Madeline laughed lightly. "I don't think returning a lost wallet warrants a dinner invitation." Felix tilted his head, intrigued. Most people would have jumped at the chance. "Consider it my way of paying it forward." She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. "I don't think so, but thanks." His brow furrowed. He wasn't used to being turned down. "You don't like dinner?" "I love dinner. I just don't make a habit of accepting invitations from strangers in airport lounges." Felix chuckled, shaking his head. "Fair enough." He reached into his wallet, pulled out a sleek black card, and handed it to her. "If you ever change your mind, call me." She took the card, her gaze flickering over the embossed Kensington Enterprises logo. Her stomach flipped. She knew that name. Everyone did. Felix Kensington wasn't just some businessman. He was the Felix Kensington CEO of one of the most powerful investment firms in the world. She swallowed hard, suddenly feeling out of place. "Thanks, but I think I'll stick to my own plans." He watched her with an unreadable expression before nodding. "Safe travels, Madeline." She turned and walked away, slipping his card into her pocket. She wouldn't call. There was no reason to. And yet, as she boarded her flight, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time she'd see Felix Kensington. Madeline had barely settled into her seat before the flight attendant announced their descent into New York. The entire journey, her thoughts had drifted back to the man in the airport lounge, Felix Kensington. Even if she hadn't recognized his name right away, there had been something about him, something commanding, like he expected the world to bend around him. She pulled his business card from her pocket, running her thumb over the embossed letters. It was ridiculous to even consider calling him. Men like Felix didn't go out of their way for people like her. He had probably forgotten about their exchange the moment she walked away. The plane landed smoothly, and after collecting her small carry-on, she stepped into the crisp evening air outside the terminal. Madeline, her best friend Olivia, waved from the curb, standing next to her dented sedan. Madeline grinned and hurried over, throwing her bag into the backseat before sliding into the passenger side. "How was the trip?" Olivia asked, merging into traffic. Uneventful, Madeline said, though the weight of Felix's business card in her hand told another story. Olivia's sharp eyes caught the movement. What's that? Madeline debated for half a second before handing it over. Olivia's gaze flickered over the name and then she nearly swerved into another lane. Felix Kensington, she squeaked. Why do you have this? Madeline sighed. I found his wallet at the airport lounge and gave it back to him. He offered me dinner as a thank you, but I said no. Olivia gaped at her. You said no. To dinner with one of the richest men in the country, Madeline shrugged, staring out the window as the city lights blurred past. I wasn't about to have dinner with a total stranger. Olivia groaned, tossing the card back into Madeline's lap. You're impossible, Madeline laughed, shaking her head. I doubt he even remembers me. Felix hadn't forgotten. Days later, he still thought about the woman who had returned his wallet. It wasn't just that she had turned down his invitation, though that had been unexpected. It was the way she had looked at him, like she saw him as just another man, not a billionaire CEO. That was rare. He sat in the back of his town car, staring out at the city skyline, his assistant, Daniel, rattling off updates from his tablet. And the Kensington Gala is next Saturday. Your presence is expected. Felix barely heard him. His fingers tapped against his knee. Finally, he cut through Daniel's list. Look up a woman for me, Daniel blinked. A woman? Madeline Turner. She was on a flight from London to New York the same night I was. Daniel's expression didn't change. He was used to Felix's unpredictable requests. I'll have something for you by tomorrow. Felix nodded, already knowing he wouldn't let this go. Madeline had just finished an exhausting shift at the bookstore when she stepped outside and found a sleek black car idling by the curb. The back window lowered smoothly, revealing Felix Kensington. She froze, gripping the strap of her bag. Are you following me? Felix tilted his head slightly. I prefer to think of it as persistence, Madeline exhaled. How did you find me? I have resources. His gaze didn't waver. I still owe you dinner. She folded her arms. You don't owe me anything. Felix leaned slightly toward the open window. Then let's call it something else. Curiosity, maybe. She hesitated, her heart hammering. Felix watched her closely. One dinner. If you hate it, I'll leave you alone. Madeline should have said no, but something about the determination in his voice made her pause. After a long silence, she sighed. Fine, one dinner. A slow smile crossed his face. I'll send a car for you tomorrow at 7. Before she could argue, the window rolled up, and the car disappeared into the bustling street. Madeline stared after it, wondering what she had just agreed to. Madeline had never been inside a car this luxurious before. The leather seats felt like butter beneath her fingertips, and the city lights reflected off the tinted windows, casting a soft glow inside. She shifted uneasily as the driver maneuvered through Manhattan's streets, her mind still grappling with the absurdity of the situation. Felix Kensington had sent a car for her, to take her to dinner. She had almost backed out twice, but Olivia had practically shoved her out the door, insisting she'd regret it forever if she didn't go. And now, here she was, being whisked away to a dinner that felt more like stepping into a different world. The car finally rolled to a stop in front of a restaurant that didn't have a name, just sleek black awnings and a discreet golden emblem on the door. The valet opened her door before she had time to gather her thoughts, and she stepped out, feeling wildly out of place in her simple black dress. Felix was waiting just inside. He wasn't checking his phone or speaking with the host. He was watching the entrance, as if he had been waiting for her specifically. His eyes swept over her, not in the way men at bars did, but like he was taking in a detail he hadn't expected. You came, he said, his voice laced with something that almost sounded like satisfaction. You did send a car, she pointed out. Felix stepped forward, offering his arm. I like to make things easy. She hesitated, but finally slipped her hand into the crook of his arm. The moment she did, she felt the strength beneath his suit, the quiet power in the way he carried himself. The restaurant was dimly lit, with chandeliers that dripped crystals like frozen rain. The tables were spaced far apart, the kind of place that catered to people who didn't want to be overheard. Is this where you take all the people who return your lost belongings? She asked as they were seated at a secluded table near a massive floor-to-ceiling window. Felix's lips twitched. No, in fact, I don't lose things often. Madeline arched a brow. So I've heard. A sommelier appeared with a bottle of wine that she didn't recognize, pouring a taste for Felix before filling both their glasses. Madeline traced the rim of hers, watching him. So is this what you do? She asked. Find people who intrigue you and invite them to extravagant dinners. Felix leaned back slightly, his gaze steady. No, but I make exceptions for people who do the unexpected. She tilted her head. Returning a lost wallet isn't exactly groundbreaking. Most people would have kept the cash, or at least tried to contact me in a way that benefited them. His fingers tapped lightly against the table. You just handed it over and walked away. Madeline exhaled, unsure why his words unsettled her. What did you expect me to do? Felix studied her for a moment before replying. I didn't expect anything, and that's rare. Their conversation was interrupted as their first course arrived, something delicate and artful, arranged like a painting on the plate. Madeline picked up her fork, feeling the weight of Felix's attention on her. You don't seem particularly fazed by all this, he observed. She took a bite, savoring the burst of flavor before answering. I work in a bookstore. I read about places like this all the time. Felix's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of interest. A bookstore. Yes, it's not as glamorous as whatever it is you do, but I like it. Felix swirled the wine in his glass. I imagine it suits you. She narrowed her eyes. And what exactly does that mean? He didn't falter. You seem like someone who appreciates stories, who notices the things others overlook. Madeline wasn't sure how to respond to that, so she simply took another sip of her wine. The evening unfolded in unexpected ways. Felix wasn't the detached businessman she'd assumed he would be. He asked questions, real ones. About her childhood, her favorite books, the places she wanted to visit someday. And he listened. It was unnerving, the way he focused entirely when she spoke, like nothing else in the world was worth his attention. By the time dessert arrived, she found herself laughing at a story he told about a disastrous business trip in Italy, something about losing luggage, and having to attend a meeting in a borrowed tuxedo 3 sizes too big. I'm sorry, she managed between laughs. It's just hard to picture you in anything other than a perfectly tailored suit. Felix's eyes gleamed. I assure you it was a humbling experience. As the plates were cleared and the evening wound down, Felix leaned forward slightly. Let me take you home, he said. Madeline hesitated. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she wasn't sure how this night had turned into something far more significant than a simple thank you dinner. I can take a cab, she said. Felix didn't argue, but there was something unreadable in his expression, something she couldn't quite place. I'd like to see you again, he said instead. Madeline swallowed, the weight of his words settling between them. I don't think I fit into your world, she admitted. Felix's gaze didn't waver. Maybe that's exactly why I want to see you again. She exhaled, glancing at the city beyond the window. Let me think about it, she said finally. Felix nodded, as if he already knew what her answer would be. And for the first time that evening, Madeline wasn't sure who was in control of this game they had unknowingly started. Madeline had spent the past several days trying to convince herself that Felix Kensington was just a fleeting moment in her life, a brush with a world she didn't belong to. But as much as she tried to push him from her mind, she couldn't forget the way he had looked at her that night at dinner like she was something rare, something unexpected. And maybe she had been fooling herself all along, thinking she could walk away without wondering what it would be like to step into his world, if only for a little while. So when Felix called, because of course he had her number, she had hesitated for only a moment before answering. Now she found herself standing in front of an elegant townhouse in the Upper East Side, her stomach twisting with nerves. The evening air was crisp, carrying the distant hum of the city, and she forced herself to take a steadying breath before knocking. The door opened almost instantly, and Felix stood there, his presence filling the space between them. Tonight he wasn't in one of his usual sharp suits. Instead, he wore a dark sweater and slacks, something more relaxed but no less refined. You came, he said, his voice quieter than usual. She nodded. I figured if you were going to keep insisting, I might as well give you a chance to prove you're not as intimidating as you seem. His lips curved slightly. I'm not sure I can promise that. She stepped inside, and the warmth of the townhouse wrapped around her. It was elegant without being ostentatious. Bookshelves lined one wall, a fireplace flickered with low flames, and the air smelled faintly of something rich and savory. "You cook?" she asked, surprised as she caught sight of the dining table set for two. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong forearms. "I had some help from my chef, but I did insist on making the pasta myself." Madeline folded her arms, amused. "You making pasta?" Felix gestured toward the table. "You can be the judge of whether or not that was a mistake." She sat, watching as he poured her a glass of wine before taking his seat across from her. The candlelight between them cast a soft glow over his features, making the moment feel strangely intimate. As she took her first bite, she let out a small sound of approval. "Okay, I'll admit." "This is good." Felix lifted his glass slightly. "I'll take that as a victory." She studied him for a moment, the flickering light catching the sharp angles of his face. "Why are you doing this?" He didn't pretend not to understand. "Because I want to see where this goes." Madeline hesitated. "You don't even know me." Felix set down his glass, his gaze unwavering. "I know that you're not like anyone else I've met, that you don't care about who I am or what I have, that you walked away when most people would have tried to use the situation to their advantage." She swallowed, the weight of his words settling in her chest. "You make it sound like some grand gesture," she said, "but I wasn't trying to prove anything." "That's exactly why it matters," Felix said. The room fell quiet for a moment, the only sound the faint crackle of the fireplace. Madeline looked down at her plate, suddenly feeling vulnerable in a way she hadn't expected. "This feels like a bad idea." Felix's voice was steady when he spoke. "Because you think I'll hurt you," she met his gaze. "Because I think this will be complicated." Felix leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. "Some of the best things in life are," Madeline exhaled, shaking her head. "You don't give up easily, do you?" "Not when something is worth it," Felix said simply. She studied him, searching for any sign that this was some kind of game to him, but there was nothing in his face that suggested anything other than sincerity. And that terrified her more than anything, because she could already feel herself slipping. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of quiet conversation, lingering glances, and moments that felt like the beginning of something neither of them could name just yet. And when Felix walked her to the door, his fingers brushed against hers, sending warmth up her arm. "Let me take you out again," he said, his voice softer now. Madeline hesitated, her heart pounding. But then she nodded just once. Felix's expression didn't change, but there was something in his eyes, something triumphant, like he had known all along that she would say yes. And as she stepped out into the cool night, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she had always known she would too. Madeline had always thought of herself as practical, the kind of woman who kept her feet firmly planted on the ground. But as she stepped out onto the balcony of Felix's penthouse, staring out at the glittering sprawl of Manhattan, she realized there was nothing practical about this. The city stretched endlessly below, the lights shimmering like a sea of stars. The air was crisp, carrying the faint hum of traffic from far below, but up here, it felt like another world entirely silent, untouchable. Felix stood beside her, his hands resting on the sleek glass railing. He had taken her to dinner again, another place so exclusive it didn't even have a menu. Every course had been a surprise, each bite more decadent than the last. And now, somehow, she had ended up here in his world, standing so close that she could feel the warmth of him at her side. She exhaled, trying to steady the unease curling in her stomach. "This is a lot," she admitted. Felix turned his head slightly, studying her. "What is?" she gestured vaguely. "All of this, the penthouse. The view, the fact that I'm standing here with you when a few weeks ago I was just trying to catch a flight home." Felix's gaze didn't waver. "Do you regret it?" She hesitated. "No." "But I don't understand why me." Felix's fingers tapped against the railing, slow and deliberate. "Because you're not like anyone else I've met." Madeline let out a soft laugh. "That's what you keep saying." "But I don't know what it means." Felix turned to face her fully, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "It means you don't ask for anything, you don't expect anything, and you don't care about all of this." He gestured toward the sprawling skyline. "You're here, but you don't need to be." Madeline swallowed, her throat tightening. "And that matters to you. Felix's jaw tensed as if he were weighing his words carefully. More than I expected. Silence stretched between them, thick with something unspoken. Madeline looked away, suddenly overwhelmed. I don't know if I fit into this world, Felix. Felix stepped closer, his voice quieter now. Then we'll figure it out together. She turned back to him, searching his face for any sign that this was a game, a fleeting distraction for a man who had everything. But there was only certainty in his eyes, steady and unwavering. Madeline inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of the moment settle deep in her chest. She hadn't meant for this to happen. She had never expected that returning a lost wallet would lead to late-night dinners and quiet moments on balconies with a man who made her question everything she thought she knew about herself. And yet, here she was. Felix reached out, his fingers brushing against hers, hesitant but deliberate. For the first time, she didn't pull away. Instead, she let herself lean into the possibility of whatever this was, whatever it could be, and for once, she didn't try to talk herself out of it. Madeline hadn't expected her life to change so drastically, but Felix Kensington was a force that refused to be ignored. From the moment he decided he wanted her in his life, he made it impossible for her to slip away. Days turned into weeks, and what had started as an improbable connection became something undeniable. He introduced her to a world she had only ever read about in novels' private art galleries where champagne flowed like water. Evenings at exclusive events where the elite whispered secrets behind diamond-draped masks. Yet, through it all, Felix remained the same steady, unwavering in his pursuit of her. Madeline tried to resist, tried to remind herself that she didn't belong in his world, but it was impossible, because when Felix looked at her, it wasn't as though she was some fleeting amusement. It was as though she was the only thing that had ever mattered. One evening, as they left a gala together, Felix guided her toward a sleek car waiting at the curb. The night air was cool, the city humming around them. I have something to show you, he said as he opened the door for her. Madeline hesitated. Felix, I don't need— I know, he interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. But I want to, she sighed, knowing there was no arguing with him when he was like this. She slid into the car and he followed, signaling for the driver to take them somewhere unknown. The ride was silent, but not uncomfortably so. Felix's hand rested on his knee, his fingers tapping lightly as if deep in thought. Madeline studied him, trying to decipher what was going on in that brilliant mind of his. When the car finally stopped, she blinked in surprise. They were in front of a charming bookstore nestled between towering buildings, its warm lights spilling onto the empty sidewalk. Madeline turned to Felix, confused. A bookstore. He stepped out and extended a hand to help her. Come inside. She followed him, her curiosity piqued. The moment she stepped through the doors, she inhaled the familiar scent of old pages and polished wood. The shop was empty, save for a few scattered books left open on tables. Felix moved past her, walking deeper into the store before turning back. This place has been here for decades. It was set to close next month. Madeline's heart squeezed. That's awful. Felix's gaze held hers. Not anymore, it belongs to you now, her breath caught. What? I bought it, he said simply. For you, she shook her head, unable to process the weight of his words. Felix, you can't just— I can, he said, stepping closer. And I did. Madeline's throat tightened. Why would you do this? Felix reached for her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. Because I want you to have something in my world that's yours. Something that makes you feel like you belong. She swallowed hard, emotion lodging in her chest. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he murmured. Just tell me you'll stay. Madeline looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of hesitation. There was none. Just certainty, the kind that made her stomach twist in the best possible way. She exhaled, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll stay. Felix's lips parted slightly, as if he had been holding his breath. Then, without another word, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It wasn't a kiss of uncertainty or hesitation. It was a kiss that sealed something inevitable, something neither of them had been able to fight. And for the first time since meeting him, Madeline stopped trying to resist. Months passed, and Madeline's life transformed in ways she never could have imagined. The bookstore flourished under her care, quickly becoming a hidden gem in the city. Felix was always there, supporting her quietly, never interfering but always making sure she had everything she needed. Their relationship deepened, the lines between their worlds blurring until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. One evening, as they closed the shop together, Felix turned to her with a look she hadn't seen before, something softer, more vulnerable. "Come with me," he said, leading her up the staircase to the rooftop terrace she rarely used. The city stretched out before them, the skyline painted in shades of gold and violet. A small table was set up, a bottle of wine waiting. Madeline raised an eyebrow. "What's all this?" Felix reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. He opened it, revealing a ring that sparkled even in the dim evening light. Felix took a slow breath before speaking. "I knew from the moment you handed me that wallet that you were going to change my life." He stepped closer, his voice steady. "I don't want to spend another day without you, Madeline." Tears pricked at her eyes. "I love you," he continued, "more than I ever thought possible." "Marry me?" Madeline let out a shaky laugh. "You really don't give up easily, do you?" Felix smirked slightly. "Not when it's something worth fighting for," she exhaled, her heart racing, but there was no hesitation, no doubt. "Yes," she whispered. Felix's eyes darkened with something fierce before he slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her like he never intended to let her go. And he never would. The wedding was everything and nothing like Madeline had expected. Felix had insisted on something intimate, despite his status. The ceremony was held on the rooftop of his penthouse, overlooking the city where their story had begun. As she stood before him, dressed in delicate lace, she felt none of the fear she once had. Felix took her hands in his voice steady as he spoke his vows. "You are the best decision I've ever made," Madeline blinked back tears, "and you are the best thing to ever happen to me." As they exchanged rings, Felix leaned in, his lips brushing hers with a promise that needed no words. The applause of their closest friends and family faded into the background as he pulled her into his arms. "You're mine now," he murmured against her ear. Madeline smiled, pressing a kiss to his jaw. "I always was." And as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, there was no doubt this was exactly where they were meant to be.